The scorching desert near Checkpoint 7 has always been a battleground between law and the lawless, but whispers of stolen weapons and hidden agendas now echo in the dusty wind, for those who know how to listen. When Border Patrol agent Elena Harper vanished near Red River Station, most assumed it was a grim cartel kidnapping, until they found her badge half buried in the dirt. The media called it an escalation. The Los Sangre Negra cartel called it a message, but both were wrong. Beneath that badge lay a secret capable of toppling an entire network of powerful conspirators. Elena wasn't merely another agent. She was among the first women to earn the Navy SEAL Trident. Now, deep in hostile territory, a silent war begins because those who took her have unleashed a relentless hunter who doesn't know how to quit. Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow. The wind howled through the barren expanse near Checkpoint 7, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and sagebrush. Elena Harper narrowed her eyes, scanning the horizon from her post. The desert always felt alive, at night shifting shadows and distant noises creating a constant state of hyper-awareness. Tonight, though, it wasn't just the usual desert whispers. Something felt wrong. Elena tilted her head slightly, catching the glint of something metallic on a distant ridge. It vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Her instincts flared. Observation post. Someone was watching. She logged the location mentally, then adjusted the radio on her vest. Sector's been quiet. Logan Reed's voice crackled through her earpiece. He sounded bored as usual. You see anything? Maybe, Elena replied, keeping her tone light. She didn't need to explain every gut feeling to him. Reed was competent but didn't have the same honed edge for spotting threats. Let me guess, tracks in the sand and spooky shadows? Reed chuckled. Something like that. Elena didn't elaborate. She continued sweeping the area with her binoculars, her senses on high alert. Over the past week, there had been subtle sign tracks leading nowhere, brief flashes of light at odd hours, vehicle trails that didn't match known patrols. The Los Sangre Negra cartel was out there, moving pieces on the board. But why now? And why here? Her radio buzzed again. Checkpoint 7, this is dispatch. We've got reports of suspicious activity in Sector 4, possible unauthorized crossing. Can you confirm? Elena frowned. Sector 4 was a remote area, too far off the main smuggling routes to be a coincidence. She glanced at Reed, who had wandered out of the checkpoint shack with a steaming cup of coffee. Sector 4, huh? That's a good 30 miles out, he said, overhearing the transmission. Want me to ride along? She shook her head. Number, stay here and keep watch. It's probably nothing. You sure? That's pretty isolated for a routine check. I'll be fine, Elena said firmly, already heading to her vehicle. Logan shrugged and took another sip of coffee. She appreciated his offer, but if her instincts were right, this wasn't a situation she wanted to drag him into. The drive out to Sector 4 was eerily silent. Elena kept her headlights on low, the hum of the engine the only sound in the darkness. Her mind raced through scenarios. Why stage activity out here? Smugglers usually kept to well-established routes. This felt off. She reached the designated coordinates, killing the engine. The area was vast and open, with scattered rocks and low shrubs offering minimal cover. She stepped out of the vehicle, boots crunching on gravel. The silence deepened, oppressive in its stillness. A low rustle broke the quiet. Elena froze, her hand instinctively moving to the sidearm holstered at her hip. She scanned the shadows, listening intently. The rustle came again closer this time, from the direction of a shallow ridge about 50 yards ahead. Dispatch, this is Harper. I've arrived at Sector 4. No visual contact yet, she whispered into her radio. The reply came distorted, barely audible. Copy. Stay. Repeat. The transmission cut out abruptly. Elena's grip on the radio tightened. Jamming? The cartel had used similar tactics during her military deployments. She crouched low, edging toward the ridge for a better vantage point. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her breathing steady. The sound of an engine roared to life behind her. She spun around just in time to see a dark SUV barreling toward her vehicle. She ducked for cover as the SUV skidded to a stop, its headlights illuminating the area like floodlights. "Harper, you've got company," she muttered under her breath. Doors slammed and multiple figures stepped out of the vehicle. They were armed rifles slung over shoulders, pistols glinting in the harsh light. Elena counted at least 5 men. One of them, taller and with a commanding presence, barked orders in Spanish. "Surround the area. She's here somewhere. Move fast." Hector Alvarez. Elena recognized the voice from intel briefings. He was one of Ortiz's top lieutenants, known for his brutal efficiency. Alvarez was the type who didn't leave loose ends. Elena pressed herself tighter against the ridge, heart pounding. This was no routine smuggling operation. They had come specifically for her. But how did they know she would be here? A beam of light swept over the ridge, narrowly missing her position. She had seconds before they would find her. She weighed her option: fight or disappear. Alvarez's voice rang out again. "Harper, we know you're here. Make it easy on yourself." Elena remained silent. She needed a plan, and fast. But as more lights converged on her location, she realized the trap had already closed. She exhaled slowly, preparing herself for the confrontation. "You wanted me here for a reason. Let's see if you're ready for what's coming," she thought grimly. The beam of light finally landed on her, and shouts erupted. Guns were raised. Elena slowly stood, hands raised in feigned surrender. The men circled her, weapons trained on her every move. Alvarez approached, a smug grin on his face. "Smart move, Harper," he said, "but don't get comfortable. This is just the beginning." The desert fell eerily silent once more, as Alvarez's men escorted Elena toward the waiting SUV. The dark SUV tore through the barren landscape, kicking up dust in its wake. Elena Harper sat between 2 armed men in the back seat, her wrists bound. She kept her breathing steady, her eyes scanning the scenery as they sped toward an unknown destination. She took mental notes: turns, landmarks, and changes in terrain. The road grew rougher after a sharp right turn, suggesting a shift from public routes to private land. She counted every bump and curve, committing the details to memory. "You might as well relax," Hector Alvarez said from the front seat, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. His tone was smug, as if he had already won. "You'll be meeting El Patron soon enough. He has a special interest in you." Elena didn't respond. She remained expressionless, processing his words. El Patron Manuel Ortiz was the cartel's leader. If Ortiz had a plan for her, this situation was bigger than she had anticipated. She subtly adjusted her position, noting the layout of the vehicle and where each man's weapon was holstered. "Everything's under control," Alvarez continued, as if to reassure himself more than anyone else. He reached for a satellite phone and spoke in a low voice, switching to Spanish. Elena didn't react outwardly, but she listened carefully. "Sí, tenemos a Harper," Alvarez said. "We're en route to the compound now. Everything is going smoothly." He paused as the voice on the other end responded. Alvarez's expression tightened slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Relax," he finally replied. "She won't figure anything out. We're ahead of schedule." Elena filed away that comment, her mind racing. What was it they didn't want her to figure out? Alvarez's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Make sure she doesn't find out," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "We can't afford another ghost walker." Ghost walker. The phrase echoed in Elena's mind like a warning bell. She kept her gaze unfocused, as though she weren't paying attention. Whatever this operation entailed, it was far more intricate than a simple cartel smuggling scheme. The conversation ended abruptly. Alvarez tossed the phone onto the dashboard, his smug demeanor returning. "You're quiet," he remarked, turning back toward her. "Planning your next move already?" Elena raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Let him think she was biding her time. In reality, she had already begun piecing together the puzzle. They weren't alone in this. Someone powerful was pulling the strings. The vehicle finally slowed as they approached a high metal gate. Guards armed with automatic rifles waved them through after a brief exchange with Alvarez. Elena noted the watchtower, the placement of cameras, and the guard rotation. This wasn't just a compound, it was a fortress. As the SUV came to a halt inside the compound, Alvarez gave her a mocking smile. "Welcome to your new home," he said. Elena's mind remained sharp, dissecting every detail. The cartel may have captured her, but the real threat was still hidden in the shadows. Elena was shoved into a dimly lit office at the heart of the compound. The walls were lined with shelves cluttered with documents and maps, while a heavy wooden desk dominated the room. Behind it stood Manuel Ortiz el Patron. He was tall, with a meticulously groomed beard and a calm, calculating gaze that sent a quiet message of authority. "Ah, Agent Harper," Ortiz said, his voice smooth yet cold. "I must admit your capture has caused quite a stir. I expected someone more ordinary." Elena kept her expression neutral. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Ortiz chuckled, stepping around the desk. "Let's not waste time with pretense. You know what I want to discuss. Operation Longhorn." The name hit her like a jolt, but she didn't flinch. She had heard whispers about the classified initiative, a multi-agency effort to cripple cartel operations along the border. For Ortiz to know about it meant someone had betrayed the operation. Elena feigned confusion. "Never heard of it." Ortiz leaned in closer, studying her face. "I admire your discipline, but I don't need you to talk. We have other ways of gathering information. You're just a piece of leverage, know a message to your superiors." Leverage. The word echoed ominously. Elena maintained her composure, buying time to process the situation. Someone within her agency was feeding intel to the cartel, and Ortiz's operation was bigger than drugs or human trafficking. "You see, Harper," Ortiz continued, "we've entered a new era. It's no longer just about smuggling contraband. We're facilitating something much more lucrative." He motioned toward a tablet on his desk. A quick glance revealed detailed manifest weapon shipments, encrypted communications and payment records. Weapons. Military grade. This wasn't just a cartel operation. It was arms trafficking on a large scale. "Who's your buyer?" Elena asked, testing the waters. Ortiz smiled, amused by her sudden interest. "Multiple clients, some in your government, others less official. But that's not your concern. The only thing you need to understand is that everyone is replaceable in this game." The statement hung in the air, weighted with unspoken menace. Elena sensed there were layers to his words. Ortiz wasn't acting alone. His cartel was a pawn in a far-reaching network, likely involving the same shadowy organization Alvarez had referenced earlier. "Replaceable," Elena repeated, letting the words settle. She wanted Ortiz to think she was unraveling, but in truth, her mind was already making connections. Blackstone's security, she thought. It fit the profile: covert operations disguised as private contracts. Ortiz straightened, his voice turning more businesslike. "Enjoy your stay here, Agent Harper. It will be brief." 2 guards entered to escort her away. Elena glanced back once more at the manifest screen. She had seen enough to know this wasn't just a border conflict, it was a war for control over something much larger. Elena crouched in the corner of her cell, her eyes half closed in feigned exhaustion. In truth, she was focused on the guards' movements and the sounds echoing through the compound. Every detail mattered: timing of shifts, idle chatter, and any mention of operations. The compound was a pressure cooker, and she planned to turn up the heat. The opportunity came during a routine interaction. One of the guards, a younger man named Carlos, had the look of someone who liked to gossip. Elena waited until he passed her cell to make her move. "Busy night?" she asked casually, her voice low and tired. Carlos hesitated but finally answered, "Always something. Alvarez's orders." "Bet he's stressed," Elena added, letting the words hang. "He's got a lot to explain with those shipments going missing." Carlos frowned, caught off guard. "What shipments?" "Never mind." Elena said, turning her head away as if she had said too much. The guard lingered for a moment, clearly intrigued. He walked away, but not before she saw the seed of doubt take root. Later that night, rumors began spreading through the compound. Elena could hear snippets of conversations from passing guards. Words like missing inventory and internal theft buzzed through the air like static. She knew how easily paranoia could infect a close-knit operation, especially one already under stress. By the next morning, the tension was palpable. Alvarez's voice echoed through the hallways as he barked orders at his men. His temper was on full display. "I want answers. Who's been tampering with the manifests?" Elena smirked to herself. The cracks were already forming. In the compound's operations room, Rafael Cruz crossed his arms, glaring at Alvarez. The two cartel leaders had never seen eye to eye, but this new situation was pushing their rivalry into open hostility. "You're losing control," Cruz said bluntly. "How does inventory just vanish without anyone noticing? Maybe you should ask your men." Alvarez shot back. "Security's your job, isn't it?" Cruz stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't test me, Alvarez. You know as well as I do that this isn't some random mistake. Someone's playing games. And if it's one of your people..." "Enough." Ortiz's voice cut through the tension as he entered the room. His calm presence only heightened the unease. "I don't care who's responsible. Find the leak, contain the problem, and handle it quietly. We have bigger priorities." Both men reluctantly nodded, but the damage had been done. Cruz's suspicion toward Alvarez was now deeply entrenched. Meanwhile, Elena continued gathering intelligence. She kept track of guard patrols and memorized the layout of the facility based on her movements during transport. She learned which areas had camera blind spots and which doors required keycard access. Her escape plan was slowly taking shape. The next piece of chaos fell into place when one of the guards, Carlos, suddenly disappeared. No one knew where he had gone or if he had abandoned his post. Rumors swirled that he had been caught skimming from the cartel or had been silenced for knowing too much. Either way, his absence sent shockwaves through the compound. Cruz was livid. In the yard, he confronted a group of guards, his voice sharp and cold. "Carlos didn't just vanish. Someone knows something. Whoever's playing games better hope I don't find them." The guards exchanged uneasy glances, but remained silent. Cruz stormed off, leaving a trail of fear in his wake. The atmosphere was charged with paranoia, and Elena knew it wouldn't take much more to push things over the edge. That evening, she overheard Cruz speaking to one of his trusted enforcers. "We can't afford to look weak right now," he said. "If Alvarez thinks he can undermine me, he's wrong. I'll find proof and take him down myself." Elena filed the conversation away. Cruz was on the verge of making a move against Alvarez, which would destabilize the entire operation. The more divided they became, the easier her eventual escape would be. For now, all she had to do was wait and let the chaos unfold. The cartel was unraveling from within, just as she had planned. Elena sat in the dim cell, her mind racing as she worked a thin piece of metal taken from a loose shower drain into a makeshift lockpick. The guards hadn't suspected a thing during their routine inspections. Distracted by the escalating tension in the compound, Cruz and Alvarez's power struggle had created the perfect opportunity for her plan. The lock clicked. Elena exhaled quietly and pushed the door open a fraction of an inch. She listened for any movement outside. The hall was silent except for distant voices echoing from the yard. She slipped out, keeping close to the wall as she moved toward the facility's control center. She navigated the compound with precision, using the routes she had memorized over the past days. The guards were spread thin, patrolling erratically in response to the recent disappearances and sabotage rumors. Elena took advantage of the chaos, making her way to the communications hub. Inside, she located the primary relay station and quickly severed key wires, disabling internal and external communication. She checked the security monitors. Several cameras flickered offline as she initiated a loop in the surveillance feed, masking her movements. With communications down, Elena moved toward the vehicle yard. She poured gasoline from a nearby generator across several trucks and lit a match. The fire ignited with a whoosh, sending thick plumes of smoke into the night sky. Alarms blared, and shouts rang out as cartel members rushed to contain the blaze. The distractions bought her time, but she knew it wouldn't last. Elena sprinted toward the outer fence, her senses on high alert. She was just a few hundred yards from the perimeter when two guards spotted her. "Stop her!" one of them yelled. Elena dove behind a stack of crates as bullets zipped past her. She returned fire, taking out one of the guards with a precise shot. The other hesitated, giving her the opening to close the distance. She disarmed him with a swift strike, knocking him unconscious before continuing her escape. As she reached a blind spot near the compound's eastern gate, Elena pulled out a satellite phone she had confiscated earlier. She dialed a secure line, and Agent Nolan's voice came through. "Harper? What's your status?" "Escape the compound. Communications are down. I need reinforcements at my coordinates fast." "Understood. We're dispatching a team now. ETA 15 minutes. "Copy that," Elena said, ending the call. She didn't mention the scale of the operation or the weapons cache she had discovered. For now, she needed to focus on surviving the next few minutes. She scaled the outer fence and landed on the other side, adrenaline surging through her veins. The compound was in full chaos behind her. Fires raged, and the sound of gunfire echoed as guards scrambled to regain control. Suddenly, a crackling noise filled the air. Elena froze as an unfamiliar voice broke through on the hacked radio channel she carried. "Echo 7, you're out of your depth. Stand down." The voice was calm, authoritative, and chillingly familiar. It wasn't Cartel, this was something far more organized. Elena's heart pounded as realization set in. Blackstone Security had found her. The first sign of the raid came with the distant rumble of helicopters. Elena crouched low, watching from the tree line outside the compound's perimeter as tactical teams moved into position. Red and blue strobe lights flashed in the distance, signaling the arrival of law enforcement. The DEA and Border Patrol were here in full force, but Elena knew it wouldn't be that simple. Through her radio, she heard urgent voices from the compound. "We're under attack. Alvarez, rally your men." The chaos she had orchestrated was now reaching its peak. But another voice interrupted a cold, professional tone that didn't belong to any of the cartel members. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, deploy perimeter lockdown. No one gets out." Elena's stomach dropped. Blackstone Security. The mercenaries were here, and they weren't just protecting the cartel, they were taking control. Gunfire erupted near the main entrance as DEA agents clashed with cartel guards. Elena stayed on the move, navigating through known blind spots. She reached a utility shed near the compound's command center, where she found a small tablet left on a workstation. She quickly skimmed through files, her suspicions confirmed. Shipping manifests and encrypted orders referenced high-grade weapons and military hardware evidence that Blackstone had been using the cartel to smuggle arms for years. Before she could process further, a voice barked from behind. "Drop it!" Elena spun, raising her hand slowly. Rafael Cruz stood a few feet away, a pistol aimed at her chest. His face was a mask of fury, but there was also a glimmer of realization. "So, you've been the ghost haunting us this whole time," Cruz said, stepping closer. "You think you can dismantle everything we built?" Elena's eyes narrowed. "You didn't build anything. You're just a pawn. Blackstone's been using you." Cruz hesitated for a moment, but quickly hardened his stance. "Don't try to psych me out. You have no idea how deep this goes." Elena moved fast, knocking the gun from his hand with a sharp blow to his wrist. The weapon clattered to the ground, and Cruz lunged at her in a blind rage. They grappled, trading vicious blows. Cruz was strong, but Elena had the advantage of training and precision. She ducked a wide swing, landing a strike to his ribs that sent him staggering. He recovered quickly, charging at her and tackling her to the ground. Elena fought through the impact, using his momentum against him. She rolled and pinned him beneath her, driving her knee into his chest. "Give it up," she growled. Cruz coughed, blood staining his teeth as he glared up at her. "You think you've won? This isn't over." Elena stared at him, reading the truth behind his words. Cruz wasn't bluffing. He truly believed in whatever power structure lay behind Blackstone's operations. The sound of boots pounding against gravel interrupted them. DE agents stormed into the area, weapons drawn. Cruz was yanked to his feet and restrained. One of the agents nodded at Elena. "We've secured most of the compound, but there's resistance near the east gate. You good?" "I'm fine," Elena said, standing and wiping dirt from her face. "There's something you'll want to see in the command center. Evidence that ties the cartel to a much bigger network." As Cruz was dragged away, his final words echoed in her mind. This isn't over. Elena knew he was right. The cartel might be crumbling, but Blackstone wouldn't go down so easily. The real battle had only just begun. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. It means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. The compound lay in ruins. Smoke and debris scattered across the grounds as agents secured the last of the cartel members. Inside the makeshift command center, Elena Harper and Agent Nolan sifted through the files she had recovered. The manifests, encrypted communications, and transaction records painted a chilling picture. "This isn't just cartel work," Nolan said, scrolling through the data. "These weapons, they're military issue. And look at the routing details. Blackstone's name keeps popping up." Elena nodded, her jaw tightening. They've been moving arms through cartel networks for years. This isn't smuggling, it's infrastructure. A shadow supply chain hidden in plain sight. Nolan frowned, leaning closer to the screen. "Operation codes. Here it is. Project Ghostwalker. Does that mean anything to you?" Elena froze for a moment, her mind flashing back to a desert mission in Syria. Her SEAL unit had been sent to intercept what they believed was a rogue arms deal. Instead, they had walked into a carefully orchestrated trap. Ambushed, cut off, and outnumbered, they lost nearly half their team. Officially, the mission never happened. No records, no explanations, just classified silence. "Ghostwalker," Elena whispered, the name tasting like old betrayal. She had suspected for years that someone high up had set them up. Now she had proof. Nolan noticed her change in demeanor. "You know something, don't you?" "Yeah," Elena said, her voice hardening. "This operation was designed to bury people like me. They wanted my unit dead because we found out what they were really moving. Those weapons weren't meant for any official government mission. They were meant for private hands." Before Nolan could respond, Elena's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket and saw an encrypted message. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. "Remember Syria? They're still watching." A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't over. Whoever was behind Blackstone's operations knew she was closing in on the truth. "We've got to move fast," Elena said, locking eyes with Nolan. "If they're watching, it means Hayes is involved." "Colonel Samuel Hayes?" Nolan asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Elena confirmed. "He commanded my unit in Syria. He's been pulling strings since day one." The weight of the revelation settled between them. Elena knew now that her capture hadn't been a coincidence. It was part of a larger plan to keep her from exposing the conspiracy. Elena Harper stepped through the heavy iron gate of the secluded ranch, her footsteps steady and purposeful. The compound was quiet, too quiet. She knew this was Colonel Samuel Hayes' stronghold, hidden far from prying eyes. He had been expecting her. "Harper," a voice called from the front porch of the main house. Hayes stood there, his posture relaxed but his eyes cold and calculating. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me." Elena didn't slow down as she approached. "Not long. Your operation's been unraveling ever since you sent Blackstone after me." Hayes gave a thin smile, stepping down from the porch to meet her halfway. He was wearing his usual military-style jacket, as though he were still commanding a covert unit. "You misunderstand. Blackstone wasn't sent to kill you. They were there to protect an investment. The world needs people like us, people who understand that order is built through control." "Spare me the lecture," Elena cut in. "You've spent years building an empire on trafficking, weapons, and blood money, all under the guise of maintaining order." Hayes crossed his arms, unbothered by her accusations. "Do you think the world stays stable on diplomacy alone? You are one of my best operatives, Harper. You know the truth. Nations are fragile. Someone has to manage the chaos. And that someone is you? Elena challenged. By using cartels and private armies to line your pockets? Don't mistake your greed for necessity. Hayes' expression darkened. You're making a mistake. Destroying Blackstone won't bring peace. It'll create a vacuum. You think you're fighting corruption, but you're just setting the stage for something worse. I've heard that excuse before, Elena retorted. But this time, the truth's coming out. She pulled out a small device and held it up. All the data I pulled from the compound is already being transmitted to multiple agencies. Every transaction, every shipment, and every name. For the first time, Hayes' composure cracked. His jaw tightened. You think exposing me changes anything? There are others people far more powerful than you realize. You're not even close to the top of the chain. Then I'll keep climbing, Elena replied calmly. One step at a time. Behind her, vehicles arrived. DEA agents and federal marshals surrounded the ranch. Agents stormed the property, securing the area and taking down any remaining guards. 2 agents approached, weapons drawn, as Hayes raised his hands in surrender. You're making a mistake, Hayes repeated as they placed him in cuffs. His voice was low, but laced with menace. You think this ends with me? You have no idea what's coming? Elena stared him down, unshaken. Maybe, but I'll be ready for it. Hayes was led away, and the ranch fell into silence once more. Elena exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. This battle was over, but she knew he was right about one thing: there were more shadows to face. As the agents finalized their sweep, Nolan approached her. We got him, and the evidence is secure. You did it. Elena nodded but kept her focus on the horizon. This was just one part of the fight. There's more to uncover. She turned and walked away, already planning her next move. Elena Harper stood on the edge of the ranch's property, watching the last of the federal vehicles disappear into the distance. The cool night air carried a sense of finality, but she knew this victory was only a small step in a much larger battle. Hayes was in custody, Blackstone's operations were exposed, and the cartel's network had crumbled. Yet the weight of his final words lingered in her mind. You think this ends with me? You have no idea what's coming. Her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, a new encrypted message. The sender was anonymous, but the content was clear. You're not done. We still need you. Coordinates incoming. Elena frowned, recognizing the signature formatting of a former ally she thought had gone dark. Someone was still in the fight. Someone who understood what she was facing. Still watching, she muttered under her breath. Agent Nolan approached from behind. You heading back to the base with us? Elena shook her head. Number, there's something I need to follow up on. Another lead? Nolan raised an eyebrow. Something like that, she replied vaguely. Nolan gave her a knowing look and didn't press further. As he walked away, Elena's gaze hardened. The shadows she had been hunting stretched farther than she had imagined, but she wasn't afraid. She whispered to herself, ghosts never stop hunting. And with that, she vanished into the night, already moving toward her next mission. Elena's courage exposed a network once thought untouchable. Yet every answer sparks a new mystery. Are we prepared to face the next revelation lurking around the corner? Share your thoughts and this story with others. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.